Here we're going to go over two quick problems. The first one here is asking us to simplify the square root. If I have a square root in my numerator and my denominator, what I personally like to do is just combine that square root like this. Now I can look at what's under that square root and I'll see a fraction and I can ask myself if I can simplify that fraction. Well, 6 divided by 3 is 2, so this is actually the same as 2, the square root of 2. And at this point, when I look at what's under that square root, that is a prime number and there aren't two 2's. There's nothing being squared here, so it needs to remain under the square root. So this would be my final answer. Now let's look at one a little bit more difficult. So for this, again, I'm going to combine it under one square root. And when I look at this to simplify, I see an x divided by an x. X divided by x is 1, so I can just cancel that out. But 75 and 8, I can't divide anything by 75 that I can also divide by 8. So I need to leave my square root as this. So at this point, I'm just going to separate it back into two square roots. And I'm going to see if there's anything I can take out from underneath that square root symbol. So I need to break 75 and 8 down into the factors, the numbers that multiply to give me 75 and multiply to give me 8. So I can see if anything's going to be squared. So I'm going to do that using prime factorization trees. And when I do that, I see that 75 is the same as 3 times 5 times 5, and 8 is the same as 2 times 2 times 2. Now I can ask myself what's being squared. That's what the square root symbol is saying. So in my numerator, I see 5 times 5. That's 5 squared. So 5 is being squared in my numerator, but there's just one 3, so I need to leave that under the square root. And the same for my denominator. 2 times 2 is 2 squared. So 2 is being squared. But there's only one 2 left, so I need to leave that 1 2 under my denominator. The last step is to simplify. Now we cannot have a square root in our denominator, and we have a square root of 2. So you want to think, what can I multiply this whole fraction by so that this square root of 2 cancels out? So remember, we can multiply a fraction by anything. I can multiply it by 6 over 6 because 6 over 6 is the same as 1. But that's not going to get rid of my square root. So let's think about that. What if we multiply it by the square root of 2? What do we get if we multiply our numerator and our denominator by the square root of 2? Well, in our numerator, we get 5, 3 times 2. In our denominator, we have a 2 in the square root of 2 times 2. Now let's look and ask ourselves, what's being squared? In our numerator, is there anything being squared here? That's what the square root is asking, what's being squared? Nothing. So our numerator stays as 5, but let's change that 3 times 2 to 6, because there's nothing else we can do with that. In our denominator, what's being squared? Well, 2 times 2 is 2 squared. So 2 is being squared. So we can bring a 2 out. So in our denominator, we just have a 4. And this will be our final answer.